Hey all, it's Dave here, the creator of Paddy, and thanks for checking out the beta version of Paddy 2. So I've been really busy completely rewriting Paddy in a way that makes it heaps faster and will also mean I can do a lot more with it in the future. Firstly, I just thought I'd highlight this README, which has a couple of steps of getting started, as well as has a list of my to-do list. Now I'll update this as I go, and as you can see, not everything's done yet. It can't quite do everything that Paddy 1 can do right now, but what I have re-implemented, it can do a whole lot better. All right, let's get stuck into it. Now, this isn't gonna be a tutorial on how to use Paddy. Instead, I'm just gonna highlight some of the key differences. And to start with, I'm gonna talk about stack groups and spacing. So before, you'd have to apply any properties you wanted through the name of the layer. But now, say I've got a group, if I want to set some spacing on this, there's a new option here in the inspector called stack layers. If I click on the plus, it's going to turn it into a stack group now, and it changes the icon in the layer list to green, so it's easier to see at a glance which ones have spacing applied to it. And it's also going to guess its orientation and spacing. But I can change this easily, and you can change it on the fly really quickly, and it will automatically keep laying itself out. So this will work even if I resize layers, even if I move them, it's just going to keep updating automatically. One of the other cool things is we've got the alignment here as well in the inspector. So setting that will apply the alignment to all the layers in that group. So in this case, it's fixed so that they're always centered. So now if I resize them or move them, it's always going to snap back so they're always centered, as well as applying that spacing. Now there's another option called collapse hidden views. That's new. What that means is when it's checked, when it's turned on, if I hide a layer, it's going to ignore it when it spaces all the layers, as opposed to when it's unchecked, it's still going to count that layer even though it's hidden when calculating the spacing. Now this still works if you have, say, multiple stack groups. Say in this case, we might change the alignment again. And if we select multiple layers and click the plus, it'll create a group and put them in it, making it even quicker and easier. And of course, it's nice and easy to change. So now when you change any of these, it'll automatically reapply to all those layers. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is, of course, padding, hence the name Paddy. It's one of the key differences of this plugin compared to some of the other ones you can get. So let's get things started by making a simple button, since that's a great candidate for this. So what I've got here is a layer and a text layer. I'm going to chuck them in a group. And now for applying padding to a layer, there's an option here called padding. If I turn that on, it's going to by default set it as these. But that means we're going to have that much spacing around any of the layers, or any of its siblings in the same group. And you can see it looks green now in the layer list as well. So it's easy to see at a glance which layers have padding applied to it. All right, let's make it look a little bit more like a button. And we can easily adjust these properties, and it will update automatically. And what this means is, say now if I change the value of my text, which changes the size of it, it'll automatically readjust. This takes into account all siblings to that layer. So if I duplicate a bunch of these, it'll do that. It'll take that into account. Now, if I want to ignore any of the sibling layers, before you'd have to put a dash in front of the name. Now there's an option, there's a checkbox here that says ignore for spacing and padding, and it will ignore it. The other cool thing is, of course, this works with stack groups as well. So if I select this whole group, say stack layers, it's going to stack them all with certain spacing, and I can apply the alignment as well. So now if I change some of these, it'll take it all into account and constantly relay it out as we go. Another really helpful example of this is using it in symbols. Now, not everything is implemented yet with symbols, but it does have some base functionality already built. So let's create another button. I'm going to chuck these in an artboard. So say that's our button label. Let's just say button. I'm going to set padding to this background layer. Maybe a bit of a radius as well. And resize this artboard to fit. I'm going to turn it into a symbol. It's called button. And now I've got my symbol set up. Now, if I go to insert this now, it'll take into account the overrides, which is really cool. So if you notice that as soon as I apply that, it'll resize. And it looks a little funny at the moment, and that's just because I haven't set the right resizing properties. So if I set this to be resizing and fixed from the edge on each side, now when it resizes, it'll look right. Because all that Paddy does is simply resizes the symbol to what feels like the right size, taking into account the padding we've supplied. So now this will update automatically. So all you need to do is just hit enter and it will update, as opposed to before in Paddy version 1 where you'd have to click away before it would update. And of course this works as well with multiple symbols, say in a stack group as well. So once again, let's chuck them in a stack group. Maybe we'll chuck some alignment on it. Now if I duplicate some of these, it'll all update. The cool thing is with stack groups is it'll sort them automatically based on their Y position. So I can simply drag this up to reorder them as well, which is really handy. All right, another cool addition with Paddy 2, which I think will be a real time saver, is to do with when you resize in groups. So if I create a couple of layers here, I'm going to group them all. Normally when you resize, it will simply resize all the layers. However, what if you want to be very particular about all your spacing between your layers and your padding around everything? It's a real pain when you want to resize to a specific width without doing maths to figure out the exact new size of these layers. It gets quite fiddly. So the cool thing is now, say for example, I set padding on this background layer and turn this whole group into a stack group. Now when I resize and let go, it'll automatically recalculate to make sure we've got the right spacing between all the layers as well as the padding around the outside, which is really cool. It's really a little thing, but a big thing. I think it'll be a big time saver. Just thought I'd highlight that little freebie as well. Let me know how you go with this version of the beta. I'm going to keep making changes and be releasing new versions of the beta as I do them. I'd love your thoughts on any bugs or anything you come across, what works, what doesn't, before I release this to everyone else that's using Paddy. I just want to make sure it's really stable. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks.